Good morning, church. Welcome to this morning service. And today I'll be speaking on expectation. Now, I, I believe that this is one of the key ingredients to really unlocking a lot of potential and a lot of future for your life as well those around you. So let's start with John 5, verse 1. And this is a story of Jesus going up to a pool uh, at the sheep gate in Jerusalem. Okay, so after this, there was a feast of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Now, there is in Jerusalem by the sheep gate a pool, which is called in Hebrew Bethesda, having 5 porches. In this lay a great multitude of sick people, blind, lame, and paralyzed, waiting for the moving of the water. For an angel went down at a certain time into the pool and stirred up the water. Then whoever stepped in first after stirring of the water was made well of whatever disease he had. Now, what was unique about this pool by the sheep gate was that everyone knew that every now and then an angel would go down and stir the water, and the first person to enter the pool will be healed, and everyone else just would have to wait for the next time another angel comes down and stirs the water again. So it's a very unique pool, but it's known to heal the first person that enters it whenever an angel stirs the water. Yeah, that's verse 5. And now a certain man was there who had an infirmity 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he had already been in a condition a long time, he said to him, "Do you want to be made well?" The sick man answered him, "Sir, I have no man to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up. But while I am coming, another steps down before me." And Jesus said to him, "Rise up, take up your bed and walk." And immediately the man was made well, took up his bed and walked. Okay, so this is one of those really interesting passages where you read it and you go, that was a weird response. Okay, why do I say that? Now look at what's happening here. Okay, so we know that only the first person that goes to the pool would be healed. And Jesus goes there and he sees a guy, and he knows the guy has been sick for a long time. Uh, and in not just sick for a long time, it's been 38 years. Okay, and we can deduce from his condition that he's probably paralyzed. Okay, and he's not able to walk, so he's probably on the ground. And he's trying to get to the pool, but he just cannot get to the pool in the sense that he's waiting at the side of the pool. He's wanting to be the first one into the water, but because of his condition, whenever the angel stirs the water, someone else would either jump ahead of him, okay, um, and on top of that, there's no one to help him get into the water, okay. So Jesus asked him a question, a very interesting question. It says, "Do you want to be made well? Do you want to be healed?" Okay, so Jesus comes up to the guy, comes up to him and asks him, "Do you want to be healed?" Now, here's the interesting response that he gives Jesus. Instead of saying yes, no, he says, "There's no one to put me in the water. No, when the angel comes and stirs it up." And you know what? Even if uh, there was probably, someone else would go in before me, you know. So so why is this important? Because many times we don't understand that we are like that too. Okay, the Lord wants to bless us. The Lord wants to shift us to a new place. The Lord wants to, you know, uh, unlock something in our life or an opportunity in our life, or He wants to unlock a promotion, a business opportunity, or something. And our first response is an excuse. Okay, so this is where you know, I would say that the opposite of expectation is an excuse. Okay, so you either have an expectation or you have an excuse for not having an expectation. Okay, so just says, do you want to be healed? Do you want to be made well? And if we are the type, that are full of excuses, our immediate response is going to be an excuse of why we cannot do it, or why it shouldn't be us, of why it will never work. Okay, let's talk about some expectation versus some excuses. And here's the thing that I believe that each one of us have to be really honest with ourselves. Are we replacing our expectation with excuses? Sometimes when we're young, we're full of expectation. But along the way, we live life, we get disappointed, we see things, and then we begin to replace those expectations with excuses. Okay? And if you really want to see God move in your life and you really want to see His miracles, you really want to see Him do great things, I think it's about time that we begin to replace some of those excuses with a new set of expectation. So here's the question. What are your hopes and dreams for yourself, for your family, for your children? Okay? And are those dreams still there? Are those dreams an expectation? Or have those dreams turned into an excuse? Okay, that is something that only you can ask and only you can answer. What are some expectations for your health and your relationships? Okay, or do you even have an expectation for your health? Okay, or and have you achieved those expectations, or have you replaced them with excuses? And here's the other interesting part too. Okay, what is your expectation for the world that we live in? Do you see the world as beautiful, as amazing, as a place that is getting better? Or do you see a world that's getting worse and somehow you have an excuse of why it is getting worse? See, here's the other problem with excuses. Excuses is very close relative to reason. Okay, we believe they are all good reasons, but they're actually excuses. Okay, and we're not careful, we deceive ourselves into thinking that those excuses, okay, help us live help us live a reality that will reduce our pain. Okay, that's the best way to describe it. And this is why I think that that many of us have excuses, is because we face the reality of life and we don't want to be disappointed. So what we do is that we have to find a way to get rid of our expectation. And because we are afraid that if we have expectation, and if the expectation cannot be achieved, that we will feel pain in the disappointment. So to get rid of expectation, we come up with excuses. Okay, so and and for the most part, those excuses have some truth in it. There's some grounding in it. That's why they're such good proxy for expectation. Because we actually begin to feel grounded. That yeah, there are good reasons of why you know those hopes and dreams cannot be achieved. There are good reasons of why my health is so bad. There are good reasons of why my relationships are so bad. So all these excuses, okay, it's almost like a defense mechanism that allow us, to avoid the pain of a failed expectation, or pain of a failed dream or failed hope. Okay, so that's the relationship between excuses and expectation. And now I hope to convince you on the power of expectation, and how the Lord is always interested in us having an expectation. The Bible says faith, you cannot please God without having faith. Faith is an expectation. So let me bring in some secular studies on the power of expectation. Okay. First of all, expectation determines the ceiling of our outcome. In other words, it's very seldom I meet students who have an expectation of getting a B that actually ends up with an A. Most of the time, if you expect a B, you may get a B or you may get a C. Very seldom, if not impossible, that I see. I wouldn't say it's impossible because there are always anomalies that happen. But the majority of the time, I see students that expect a B will end up with either a B or a C. And so, how do you get an A? Well, you can expect an A. If you expect an A, you may get an A sometimes, you may get a B sometimes. But what if you wanted to get A's in a consistent way? Okay, well, raise your expectation. Expect to get perfect on every exam, every quiz, every homework, to get 100% all the time. You have that kind of expectation, and you know what? Sometimes you're gonna get perfect, other times you end up with an A. Okay, so expectation creates a ceiling of our outcomes. Okay, and there's an effect called the Rosenthal effect, and this was a psychologist, Dr. Rosenthal, and what he did was that he came up with a very sneaky experiment. Okay, a lot of psychologists experiment on rats first before they experiment on humans, and so he had all these rat cages in his lab, and one night he came into the lab and he started labeling them at random. So he'll label this rat as intelligent, and he'll label another rat as, incredibly stupid. He'll label another rat as really smart. And so basically he divided the rats up between the rats that are really smart and the rats that are dumb at random. So there was no basis for this allocation. He just randomly selected the smart rats versus the dumb rats. Okay, and then he brought in his lab assistants, the researchers, and then he told them, I want you to train these rats. I want you to train these rats to complete a maze, where they have to run through this maze and find the food at the end of the maze. And then after that, he measured the outcome. What was interesting about this research outcome was that the rats that he labeled as smart were able to complete at the end of this experiment. These rats were able to complete this maze at twice the speed of the rats that he labeled as dumb. Now, that's interesting because, first of all, he didn't really know which rat was smart and which rat was dumb. He was just randomly allocating them. To all intents and purposes, none of the rats are actually dumb and none of the rats were actually smart. They were all average rats. Okay, maybe, a few of them were smart, a few of them were dumb, but the majority, okay, is going to be average. And so, but then his research results showed so clearly that the one that he labeled as smart not just completed the race a little bit better, but completed the maze at twice the speed. So what's going on? Well, it comes out there's something called expectation, because the lab assistants expected these rats to be smarter. Somehow, their expectation allowed them to train the rats in such a way that they actually became smarter. Okay, now let me give you another example. Okay, same doctor, same experiment decides to try an experiment, now taking a step further, on elementary school students, which are basically primary school students. Okay, what he did was that he told the teachers of these students, that, and to give him a list of names of their kids in class. He took the list and he randomly selected a few kids, and privately told the teachers that these kids were late bloomers, that during the academic year, that somehow they're going to show their brilliance, and they're actually really brilliant kids. Okay, and then he gave it a highly complicated and sophisticated name to a test that he claimed to have conducted. Okay, and these teachers believed him, and he told the teachers not to let the students know. So throughout this entire school year and this experiment, the students had no clue that some of them were so-called so identified as being really intelligent, and they were just late bloomers, and the rest were considered average. Okay, at the same time, the teachers were told not to tell the students, and the teacher were not told to do anything differently. They're just saying, we just secretly want you to know that these kids are actually late bloomers and that they're just going to be really intelligent for the year. Now, here's the interesting outcome. Okay, after a year, when he measured the IQ of these kids, guess what he found? The kids that he randomly picked to be late bloomers, that he told the teacher in secret that they were going to be really intelligent and they're going to bloom during the school year, all of a sudden actually bloomed and became really intelligent by the end of the school year. So, so these are, of course, they're pretty shocking discoveries, and they're now known as the Rosenthal effect. But what's going on here? What we see going on is that the teacher had an expectation on this handful of kids because she was convinced that they were late bloomers. And because of her expectation, somehow she's able to develop them to be more intelligent based on her expectation. Okay? So this is an expectation effect from one person to another. Now I want you to think, okay, how more powerful is that expectation going to be when it's an expectation of yourself? If you think an expectation of on another person can have such a big impact, what about your own expectation of yourself? How much more effect do you think that's going to have? Okay, so that's something I want you to consider. Have you been limiting the miracles in your life? Have you been limiting, the your outcome in your life? Your health, your um, your your promotion, your business opportunity, your job opportunity. Have you been limiting those because of the expectation that you had for your life? Have you come up with excuses of why, you know, things, great things, miraculous things, are not part of your life? Thirdly, I want you to understand about expectation is that expectation is something that we can all do something about. Expectation is something you can definitely change. So, how do you improve your expectation? Step one, stop looking for or making up excuses. Okay, you gotta understand, excuses are most detrimental to expectation. Okay, excuses is you trying a way to remove the expectation in your life. Okay, so stop it. You have the power to stop it. So stop it. Okay. Secondly, think big. You know, and and this is something that I taught. Okay, because you know what? Sometimes you got to stop making up excuses as to why you have excuses. Have you even thought about that? That you know that your mind could be so powerful that when you try to remove the excuse, they can your mind can even develop an excuse of why you should not remove your excuse. Okay? So how do you get around that? How do you get around your mind defending its excuses? I believe there's a way. You know, the Bible always talk about lifting your vision higher. The Bible always talk about having a bigger faith, a greater faith, you know, and it's an easy way to do it. And that's to learn to think big. Think big for yourself. Think big about the possible miracles that God can do for life. Think big about what good health could mean to you. Think big about what a great opportunity would look like to you. Okay? Instead of trying to just get rid of the excuses, maybe you should even stop entertaining those excuses and just learn to start thinking big. So here are some major takeaway for living a full life. Number one, I believe expectation is key to living the full life that God intends for each and every one of you. Number two, have expectations for your life, you know, for your children, for your family. Have expectation for your health, for your opportunities in life. Have expectations. Begin to have faith, begin to dream again, begin to have hope again. You know. Thirdly, don't just have a dream. Think big. Have a big dream. Just don't have an expectation for health. Have big expectation for your health. The Bible is full of this kind of story. About the prophet going to the king and asking the king to shoot arrow. And because he was not able to think big. He did not have an expectation that something really great was going to come out of it. So he just shot a few arrows and he stopped. The prophet was so disappointed. The prophet asked him, "Why did you stop?" Why? It's because he did not have that expectation. He was not willing to think big. Number four, remove the excuses. And excuses is one of those things, okay, that you can intentionally remove them from your life and replace them with expectations. Let us pray.